who is also a retired Navy SEAL. Great to have you on, Congressman, and a perfect morning to get your perspective. Just initially, your reaction to the airstrikes last night and the tone the president had last night of balancing, talking directly to Bashar al-Assad, but also to its allies, Russia and Iran. Was it the right tone?
Well, let me preface it by saying, as you guys know, I represent a district that we have fighting men and women that if there's anything that's going on in the world, our people are there. So I take it very serious, use of force and putting their lives at risk. But I do think, and just like the president, I'm torn too, but I think that he was, and I think that he was measured, calculated. I think he listened to his advisors, and I do think that he had the right balance.
You do. So
in tone and in action.
You saw Russia. You probably heard what Vladimir Putin said in response, that that we're to blame and they did nothing wrong, and ultimately it's self-defense. Was it enough to deter Putin's support for the murderous Assad regime? Does it change the calculation on the ground at all, or are we trying to avoid that? Do we not want to change that calculation and just say you can't use chemical weapons?
Fundamentally, I don't think it changes the calculation. I think it does have a deterrence effect, of course. Yes, Putin's going to say that's all of our fault, but the reality is their failure to uphold their end of the bargain is regrettable, predictable, and they have to be held accountable in terms of not bringing out all the chemical weapons there. And this president has drew a red line, and he's been very clear that we will not stand for this. The world won't stand for it. The world was watching last time. They're watching this time. Putin certainly was watching, and I think they hit fast, they hit hard, and I think it was calculated.
Well, Congressman, some of your colleagues in Congress were also watching, and we want to play you a quick clip of some of your colleagues talking about whether or not the president had the right to do what he did.
Striking Syria at this point would be illegal without congressional authorization.
In no way should he conduct this, because this certainly would be an illegal strike, and it would be very dangerous and tragic if this happens.
We must do all we can to prevent Syria from using chemical weapons and prevent an unhinged president or a hinged president from taking us to war in the Middle East without a plan.
Congressman Taylor, your reaction?
Well, obviously there's a lot of political rhetoric there. I think that they were very clear with what the plan was. I am someone who has been very vocal about the AUMF, that this is the third president using a 17-year-old AUMF authorization of use of military force that absolutely should be updated. The president spoke about a sustained effort there. Look, if that's the case, then yeah, he should come to Congress, and Congress should have the courage and the guts to debate this with input from the executive branch, of course, in strategy and what's happening there. But I do think that he was right to do what he did last night, and I do support it just like I did 1 year ago. That being said, I do have concerns about inside of Syria. You have a lot of great powers playing in the same sandbox. There's a lot of potential for flashpoint there in conflict, which is why I was very pleased to see the way that they took this action was calculated. It threaded a needle. It signaled a deterrence to the other great powers there, and it was targeted in scope.
It's important to point out that you are a former Navy SEAL, and you think about the mission that played out in the middle of the night there in Syria. You have been in very intense missions like this. What is your message to the men and women that served last night, but just to our military in general with all of the conflicts that we face today?
Well, as I said, my people are there, so, my heart goes out to them, Godspeed to them and their families. They need to, listen, trust their chain of command, trust their superiors, trust their training, and the men and the women on their left and the right. Look, we support our troops over here for sure in Virginia and America, and we want them to be safe. And I think it's important that, again, that this was targeted in scope, that we have told the world that we won't stand for this type of action in Syria with chemical weapons, which are obviously internationally banned, and Assad and Putin and Tehran should take note, and they should be held accountable for their actions in support of this regime.
Representative, briefly, talk to us about the morale of those troops. We've seen funding boosted, but we also see wars sort of going on and on, whether it's Afghanistan now in Syria. Do we keep the troops there? Do we not? Is there clarity of mission? They know this commander-in-chief has their back, but as it pertains to the mission and what they're executing, how's morale on that?
Well, morale's better now, but morale was low with sequestration, and part of that is our fault in Congress, right? You have congressmen and women who are like, rah, rah, we support the troops, but yet Congress, with the sequestration and continued resolutions, has really hurt the warfighter, and we've really hurt their training and readiness and maintenance, and deployment schedules have been extended, which hurts our families. But look, our troops and their families, they willingly take a huge sacrifice and have shouldered this burden of these wars over the past 17 years. I'm confident that they will continue to do their job, but it's important that our leaders show that we are with them 100% of the time and reduce the political rhetoric that is just basically worthless windbags.
Right. It's such an important message. Great to have you on, Congressman.
God bless them.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you for your service as well.
We sit on this couch in comfort and safety and freedom because of what they do for us overnight, a long ways away. All right, well, moving on. President Trump sending a message to brutal regimes by taking action in Syria. So why are some critics saying it's not enough? Corey Lewandowski says something has changed in America this morning because of it. He's up next.